Kobus Oosthuizen, will be discussing the interesting topic of the new leadership frontier, the human intelligent agent and data interface of 4IR. He's going to give you a few insights, and please, there is facility for you to ask questions, so we are really looking forward to you asking questions. Over to you, Kobus.
Fantastic, Jane. Thank you so much. Colleagues, thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you on this interesting times that we find ourselves in. And I think the term frontier is rather right. If one thinks about the movies that we've all seen of our ancestors as they have gone on to discoveries and going into areas and places that they've never been before. In other words, total uncertainty as you put one foot ahead of the other. This is kind of, I think, quite apt where we find ourselves at the specific time. And I think my intent is just to share a few thoughts with you this today, and hopefully there'll be one or two takeaways for you to go and reflect on, and perhaps see if you can't apply them in your own life. And for me, a very important area of consideration is our minds, because that is kind of the bedrock of our behavior and the way we think and reason, and how we make decisions and how we find solutions to problems and so forth. So, friends, we find ourselves, obviously, as we all know, in times where there's profound changes across all industries, and experiencing this transformation, which in its scale and scope and complexity is rather unlike anything that we've experienced before as humankind. And as we know, it's been coined now. We refer to it as the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or we often use the expression 4IR. So in this, its velocity, the breadth and the depth thereof, and the impact, as we're all experiencing it, is rather profound. If we just consider for a moment things like artificial intelligence, robotics, the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, nanotechnology, biotechnology, material science, energy storage, quantum computing, blockchain, and the list goes on and on. So there are evidently challenges and opportunities in this space that we find ourselves in, with technological advancement, which is increasingly transforming the way we work, the way we live, communicate, travel, and that we socialize, such as we are doing now, in a sense. So the age of unprecedented digital technological progress will continue to improve, and most likely, colleagues, likely to bring continued economic disruption. But now, just for a moment, let's consider the matters that further complicating things. Now, alongside this very much emphasized technology uprising is the set of broader socioeconomic, geopolitical, and demographic developments, each interacting in multiple directions, and also intensifying each other, which we find is also unfolding. And enter the equation, not to forget this whole COVID-19 pandemic that's been front and center of our thoughts and our actions and things over the past, in our case, 68 days. But obviously it started earlier than that. In South Africa's case, 68 days now of lockdown, although it's on level 3. So, but let's ask ourselves the question, what is actually the issue here? Now, the dramatic increase in the development and its impact on our lives in its broadest terms can therefore not be negated. Now, it was John Maxwell who said that everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything. So this, of course, in my view, puts leadership at the center of this paradox of potential beneficial transformations, and the profound challenges. And then this question that we've probably all been struggling with is, how should leadership evolve to navigate the disruptions to organizations and, of course, the associated impact on the social fabric? Now, let's dive a little bit into the rabbit hole. And I think it was Frank Herbert that said that the beginning of knowledge is the discovery of something we do not understand. So let's together pursue this rabbit hole that we find ourselves in. And I want to propose to you that there are three broad conclusions. In other words, the first one is that we find ourselves in times of profound digital technological progress. And secondly, there are potential benefits to be brought about by digital tech. However, there are also potential thorny challenges, which is also brought about by digitization. Now, let's think about some of the tech mega trends that we've all experienced. Now, we talk about people and the internet. Look at the way in which we are engaging today. The computing and communication and storage that's everywhere, such as the cloud, etc. Then there's the Internet of Things, which in certain parts of the world have already developed very, very far, where everything is kind of interconnected. There's, of course, artificial intelligence and big data. Another one is the sharing economy or distributed trust, which refers to the whole blockchain developments. And then, of course, there's also the digitization of matter. And there we think of 3D printing. And, one reads even about 4D printing and stuff like that. So really, a lot of these mega trends that are kind of already influencing our lives in one shape, form, or the other. But on the workforce, and perhaps if we consider factories and manufacturing and so forth, some of the effects of Industry 4.0 on this workforce, we think of driven quality control stuff. We think of robot-assisted production, self-driving logistic vehicles. There's production line simulations. There's what they refer to as predictive maintenance or self-organizing production. Then there's kind of the augmented work, maintenance and service and the like. And I invite you to go and read up about those things as well. Now, within that background, let's think about the possibility of this technological progress that possibly could leave many people behind. The computers and the robots and other digital tech are really acquiring ordinary skills and abilities at quite an extraordinary rate. So the organizational and leadership implications, in my view, are profound. From leaders to the frontline managers, my sense is we'll need to redefine jobs and processes to ensure organizational longevity. But friends, of course, we hear a lot about these predictions about future development of tech. But one wonders, in many instances, it is as self-assured as they are diverse. And often you think to yourself, but what value can be extracted from this diversity of predictions as questioned? And my talk this morning is not about predictions of any sorts, but rather of a reconfiguration of our mindsets in navigating and dealing with the times that we find ourselves in. Now, first and foremost is the question, how do we lead responsibly in 4IR? And I'll come to this new frontier in a little while. But you remember that around, I think it was probably 2016, where Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum called for the mobilization of the collective wisdom of people's minds, our hearts, souls, and to adapt and shape and harness the potential of this disruption. And what he then referred to by nurturing and applying contextual, emotional, and inspired and physical intelligence. But a little bit more about that in a while. So I think his proposition holds a lot of promise in terms of developing and enhancing our individual and our collective intelligence, or our abilities to shape a preferred future, to shape a future that we all would want. Now, let's look a bit at this, zoom in on this new frontier. With the humans, you and I, flesh and blood, and we haven't changed in our makeup since the dawn of man. Our coping mechanisms, our physical, emotional, and others, it is what it is. There hasn't been, a change or advanced evolution in that perspective. So the other one is the intelligent agent, which I just use as a collective noun when one talks about AI, IoT, nanotech, and all the other stuff. So it is that agents that have acquired and busy acquiring intelligence in a way to augment our way of work and augment our lives, improve things, and so forth. And of course, the other important part of this it's data. Now, all of this, what intelligent agents are doing, is driven by data. And there's many questions around that as well. Ethical questions, for example, who will own the data, and who owns data, and how we engage with it, and so forth. But for me, colleagues, it's at the nexus of those three that's kind of this new frontier. And I think the leadership orthodoxies are being challenged to its foundations, because this is a completely new terrain, or it's a new frontier that we're moving in. So on the right-hand side there's just a few thoughts, and we can gladly share this information with those that are interested in it afterwards. So we need to understand, of course, how to package the new and these disruptive technologies to the benefit of all people. All stakeholders need to benefit. Also, how the business must benefit from the earth, and so forth. For example, in the application of things like artificial intelligence. And then, of course, how do we apply these new technologies in already established, but also in new fields? Learning the differences and how to combine as humans and machine skills, cognitive automation, physical automation, and that human-machine interaction and joint cognitive systems in a synergistic way. How should we go about that? And then decision-making, powered by AI, to make informed database decisions. You'll see there again the importance of data. Database decisions, and take comfort in technology-assisted decision-making. And I think that's quite difficult for us as humans when you put a strong reliance on this assisted decision-making. Then the next one is embracing technology for new opportunities and new ways of working, such as the blockchain, cloud, automation, machine learning, and so forth. And then, of course, which might be a little bit of a difficult one to get hold of, to get one's mind around, is improving human intelligence through technology. Faster calculations, quicker memory recall, accelerated learning, incorporating learning programs and applications that can even be uploaded to the human brain. And we know that there are people working on that, researchers, scientists, etc. And then, of course, in the last line is our ability to be friendly with artificial intelligence. And tongue-in-cheek, we can say, have you hugged your green robot today? So that's kind of, a bit of the background. Now the question is, now what? So, as I said initially, is that, or at the beginning of the talk, is that leadership behavior, how we behave every day as leaders, manifests from our cognitive makeup. So this intelligence typology that Klaus Schwab also serves, I think, as a valuable foundation for when one considers leadership development and the like. So, but when we talk about this intelligence, I don't want you to get confused with IQ and things like that. It's not about IQ. It's rather more this general mental capability that, among others, involves the ability to reason, to plan, to solve problems, to think abstractly, to comprehend complex ideas, not to learn quickly, and of course, very important, learn experience. But now, from the now what to the so what. Today, I would want to propose to you kind of a framework that I've been working on for quite a number of years, which I believe where it is at today, I would propose or argue that it's holistic in its approach, it's integrated, it's based on phronesis, in other words, practical wisdom, and it is transdisciplinary. And I think it's extremely important from a mindset perspective that we approach this new frontier in a holistic, integrated, phronetic, and transdisciplinary fashion. You've heard of the concept of wicked problems. Just considering this COVID-19 pandemic that has become part of our lives and part of our existence and will still be for the foreseeable future, that has now entered the equation of our day-to-day actions and activities and thoughts and decision-making. It's very important to have this holistic, integrated perspective. My sense is that to just focus on one element of a system, and the others getting blurry. So it's a tall order for us as leaders, connecting all these dots and bringing them all into this mental schema of ourselves in order to lead people effectively and efficiently. Now, there are this framework that I'm referring to. There are 10 suggestions I would want to pose to you today, but that I think that every leader in the current day and age should have and should master over time in order to navigate this new frontier. And the list there are 10 of those, highlighting the essence of each, calling them an intelligence sort of type. But it's about contextual intelligence, emotional, inspired, physical, entrepreneurial, strategic, transdisciplinary, ecosystemic, Socratic, and ethical. So on the contextual intelligence, colleagues, that to me is about the mind dimension. And that has to do with knowledge, awareness of the relations and the interdependencies between all the elements of the society's ecosystem, which informs our decision-making and our behavior. The emotional intelligence, in my view, is about the heart's dimension within, which has to do with recognizing and understanding my own emotions and its effect on others, and also controlling these disruptive impulses and moods, pursuing goals with energy, with persistence, and treating people as well according to their emotional reactions. And of course, managing relationships and building networks to find common ground, but also for the common good. The inspired one is, I think, about the soul dimension, and that refers to my ability to energize people, to foster engagement, creating trust, and to infuse a vision for the future. Tomorrow is beautiful. Infusing a vision for the future that embraces the shared dreams and the concerns of the collective. Very important. And then the fourth one there, friends, the physical intelligence, which has to do with our physical dimension. That was something initially that I never really thought a lot about, because, I mean, we live in this biological vehicle, so to speak. But, spending a lot of time about the mental behaviors and so forth, one types to or tends to neglect or forget about the physical. But this is the thing that carries us around, eh? So this has to do with keeping one's physical body in harmony with one's mind, one's emotions, and the world at large. So very important is the cultivation and the maintaining of my own and others' personal health and well-being. So also promoting that with my team, because you need energy with all these challenges. So we need to exercise, we need to sleep right, eat right, and sleep right. So, if we now think about the fifth one, the entrepreneurial one, that to me has got to do about our disposition, which is about injecting imagination, motivation, commitment, passion, tenacity, integrity, teamwork, and of course, again, vision into this this reality, so to speak, this fourth industrial revolution. And despite facing many dilemmas, ambiguity, and contradictions, to identify opportunities and influence solutions, and out of that, creating value. Then there is the strategic intelligence part, which is, in my view, has got to do about the orientation, our orientation dimension. And that's got to do about the understanding the context in which one is leading and moving my followers to become willing contributors or collaborators to the common good, underpinned by a methodical and ongoing process of gathering, examining, and disseminating intelligence or knowledge of strategic value in an actionable way to assist in long-term decision-making. Right. The one about the transdisciplinary intelligence, I would suggest, is about the perspective, your perspective dimension, which has to do with the assumption that any system needs to be understood in terms of its larger environment and relationships, and the connections, and bringing information from separate disciplines together so that it can be useful knowledge that allows us to act wisely. The ecosystem intelligence has got to do about the coalescence, how we exist with other things, people, beings, and so forth. And it's about understanding that our existence within the context of the system of relationships that form our environment, and comprises, friends, of layers of systems which interact in very complex ways and can both affect and be affected by me individually and us collectively. The second, or the Socratic intelligence, in my view, has to do with, well, I'm saying obviously, but in my perspective, to do with your philosophical dimension. And that refers to leading intense dialogue in order to get to the bottom of fundamental questions of general interest with the intent to find an answer, to find a solution for the common good. Then the ethical intelligence, although it's at the bottom of the list, it does not imply, it's not listed in a list of importance, it's just a combination. But that has got to do about the moral dimension. So, friends, that has to do with recognizing my own role as member of the local, national, and international community, and of course consider the effects of my actions on these various communities. And obviously it implies a high level of consciousness. So I have then gone and put this into a kind of what I just call the intelligence framework. It's more about a tool that one could use, and all of them now are together around and interlinked to indicate the holistic and the integrated transdisciplinary way, covering the mind, the heart, the soul, the body, the disposition, our orientation, our perspective, our coalescence, our philosophy, and our morals. So for those interested in having this as kind of just a reference guide or a tool, also when one looks at one's own development as a leader, might be valuable, and you're most welcome to request us, and we will get it to you. Now, what are leadership implications? And I can't remember the person's name, but someone said that if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. So, friends, I think leaders really need to develop their capacity and their readiness to engage with all stakeholders in the context of our respective organizations. We really need to acquire an integrated, holistic view. And I often, by no means implying that I think that I've arrived, but so often you find decisions are based on very parochial or very narrow-mindedness, not cognizant of the entire theater in which things are playing out. So I really believe that this integrated, holistic view is very important. And then, of course, to pursue a multi-stakeholder orientation that really transcends this counterproductive boundaries between sectors and professions. You know, there's this siloing of the different professions where thoughts and ideas and concepts and whatever else are shared among themselves, and then the engineers or the philosophers, the psychologists, the entomologists, you know, everybody coming up with their little thing. But I believe it's important to really have to pursue this kind of a multi-stakeholder orientation when pursuing solutions and finding ways in navigating this new frontier that we are engaging in at the moment. So furthermore, I think leaders need to also look at a couple of things which I will unpack very briefly. So, for instance, to be creative and better equipped for agility and resilience in this age of persistent and acute change, and able to manage and lead in the disruptions, we require high levels of emotional intelligence and the capacity to also cultivate that with our followers. Leaders need to embrace the importance, and here's that physical one, embrace the importance of sleep, nutrition, and exercise, and understand ways of keeping their physical bodies in harmony with their mind, emotions, and the world at large. And friends, furthermore, how leaders think and reason and act in relation to value-creating opportunities in the local and the national and the global environment could extensively influence the probability of organizational longevity. And I think in times like what we currently find with this additional COVID-19 impact, that is so important. And that is where the entrepreneurial kind of intelligence comes into play. So leaders need to really understand the context in which they are leading, and sharpen the ability and the capacity to adapt to these changing conditions and these and the environment inherent to the fourth industrial revolution. And remember now, this fourth industrial revolution is active now and again for many of these phenomena, of which tech is a very primary and strong driver. And it's within this now that we also refer to this nexus of the human, the intelligent agent and the data. So, colleagues, leaders really need to adapt at contextualizing, or sorry, not adapt, but be adept, rather, at contextualizing, drawing information from separate disciplines together to generate useful knowledge that allows them to act wisely. And you know, this is also where often I think the academic world is at risk, because one tends to find a place where you can give expression to your research interests and so forth, which is quite narrow and focused. But I think we need to move beyond that. Human societies are very complex, and with many different players and environmental conditions, which necessitates us as leaders in 4IR to consider not only the system itself, but also its relationship with the environment, which forms part, of course, of the system. Following on to that, in getting to the kind of the crux of some of the fundamental questions in 4IR, we should hone the skill to facilitate regular dialogue with our followers that elicits practical wisdom in finding answers of importance to the organization's sustainability and longevity. In addition to that, leaders need to recognize their role as members of a local, national, and international community and consider the effects of their actions on these various communities. So I really need to be cognizant and aware of the effects of my actions on the people and communities that I engage with, organizational, family, etc. And then, colleagues, leaders, I believe, must have a deep sense of understanding in analyzing and distinguishing matters of right and wrong, good and bad, admirable and deplorable, as it relates not only to their own thinking and reasoning and acting, but also that of their followers in the execution of the organization's mission. Now, there's a lot of information that has been given and shared with you this morning. But now you might be thinking, okay, so what next? And perhaps a starting point. If you consider at the individual level, I think leaders should really assess themselves. And I think a valuable tool might be evaluating myself in relation to these this intelligence framework rather, and make a determination, really reflect deeply on my readiness for the new frontier, and then identify my shortcomings. I personally am at a point where it's liberating to acknowledge when I not know something about a specific area, and have, then reach out and acquiring that that skill or that competency that I require in navigating this new frontier. At the team level, leaders, I think, should really initiate developmental initiatives in relation to the new frontier to empower their employees, new skills, new competencies, considering possible redeployment if all indications are that a particular type of job might become redundant, in time to come. And then, of course, at the organizational level, I would argue that leaders should really give prominence to this new frontier in their strategic dialogue. It's much more than just the bottom line. It's much more about just profitability. There are many more things to consider within this new frontier. And if we do not become adept and reconfigure our mindsets, my sense is that many organizations will become victims of this frontier, and those that make it and survive will look back and look at those that have fallen behind them. So, colleagues and friends, these are just a few thoughts about and how we reconfigure, redeploy it. I'll answering some questions now.
Great. Thank you, Cobus. Thank you for your insights there. We do have a question from Sipolo, and it is leadership role has been nicely explained in the context of strategic intelligence, but which factors could improve strategic execution from the shop floor employees' knowledge and experience? So a really nice practical question for you, Cobus. What kind of aspects or factors could improve the execution?
All right. So, if my understanding is correct, then what factors could improve the actual execution from lower level employees' knowledge and experience? Paulo, my view would be that if I look at some of those dimensions, let's talk about the hard dimension, the emotional intelligence one. Having as a leader the deep understanding that, and if we talk about management 101, management, maybe, and now you can say I don't even need an MBA to understand this, but management in essence is getting things done through others. So if this inspired kind of intelligence, where I energize people and foster this engagement and creating trust and infusing this vision of the future that they also embrace. There's a huge responsibility on me as well as a leader for the empowerment of the people lower down into the organization. We will get nowhere. I promise you, if those that are in leadership roles are moving ahead, empowering themselves, equipping themselves, reconfiguring the mindsets and whatever else, but the people who produce the wealth, create the wealth, they are left behind. That will be absolutely so. In the execution of these strategies, it really, in my view, has to be a very close relationship between the leaders who from the call it the higher order thinking level also infuse that and impart that on the shop floor employees. And remember, as I said earlier on, we're not talking here about IQ. It's about cleverness. It's about this general ability, as I said earlier on, or this mental capability rather, that involve this ability to reason and to plan, solve problems, and think abstractly, comprehend complex ideas, and learn quickly. So it's very important that my engagement with my people needs to be frequent. It needs to be in a space where it's inspirational. It's a space where I really have a deep understanding and a grip on what this emotional intelligence is all about, and also helping them develop in that particular way. So I think maybe I'm a lot quite circular about this, but I hope that has kind of provided you with some sense of my view on the matter.
Yes, that definitely has, Cobus. I think that is important. Another question that we have from Samantha is, what role, if any, does culture of an organization play in your proposed framework or model?
Okay. Samantha, thank you for that excellent question. Now, if you go and do a little bit of literature or the internet on these various intelligences and so forth, you'll also find cultural intelligence among those. Now, cultural intelligence also has to do with improving one's ability and understanding with the ability to engage with diverse people groups of other countries, other ethnicities, and so forth. But that's kind of one part of it. It's also often referred to as social intelligence. Now, but I think what we refer to in organizational culture. So my sense would be, again, referring back to the interconnectedness of things, that the leader or leadership in an organization, their responsibility or the extent or the nature rather of organizational culture is how they impart and infuse this into the organization. So again, referring back to the framework, I think you can actually then put organizational culture at the center of those call it intelligence types, because all of those will impart and play in, and I want to use the metaphor of making a cocktail where you're adding ingredients into this. So if I can talk about the organizational culture cocktail, using these ingredients of contextual intelligence, emotional, inspired intelligence, the physical, entrepreneurial, strategic, and so forth, that would really have a huge influence on the organizational culture. But I must also remind not only myself but all of us that organizational culture is something that you don't, with a flip of a switch, change from one day to the next. So if I, as a leader, make the conscious decision that I'm committing myself in developing these areas of intelligence, not in myself, but in my people, in the organization, we will, if we take a measure to, and then again doing a measure, let's say 2 or 3 years down the line, that there will definitively, that's my argument, will be a difference and a change in the organizational culture. Thank you, Samantha.
Great. Thank you for that, Cobus. I think it's a very good question. Culture is an extremely important part of our everyday lives and where we are at the moment. At the moment, there are no more questions. So I'd like to just say thank you so much for chatting to us today, giving us your insights. I think it's incredibly important to look at where we are at the moment and take time to reevaluate, rethink the way we do things, how we do things, and then so that we can move forward in a more positive and engaging manner from all perspectives within our environment. So I'd like to thank everybody today for being part of this conversation. If there are more aspects you'd like to discuss with us, please let us know. And we are going to make the webinar and this recording available to everybody. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you being here and your time. And we hope you have a fantastic day. All the best.
Thank you very much.